Hello, it's Cava&Faulkner, Elk Grove estate planning attorney, Sacramento Living Trust attorney with Cava&Faulkner. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Daily with Christine. I'm out here in my front yard with my dog who just yawned, and I just had to tell you that he's so cute, sniffing around, enjoying the beautiful day. So today, stick around because we're going to talk about Dynasty Trust Planning for your kids, asset protection planning. Why is it important? How do you set it up? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to your kids? So stay until the end and you can learn more about protecting the legacy that you leave for your children. So I have clients ask, and maybe you wondered yourself, how can I protect what I leave for my kids from their creditors? So everything that I've worked hard for or we've worked hard for in our lives is not going to be lost potentially to our children's creditors. Is there a way to do that? So the quick and easy answer is yes, there is. It is called Dynasty Trust Planning, and it is a way to protect your legacy from your children's creditors. So let's get started. So you have to create an estate plan in order to create these dynasty trusts for your child or for your children, or perhaps your grandchildren. And the way that you do that is usually going to be by, working with a trusted attorney who is well versed in this type of planning for asset protection. And so what this really means is that when you pass away, if you're single or if you're married, when both of you pass away, then the assets, instead of going outright in your kids' hands, which opens them up to their creditors, your children's creditors, instead of that, the assets are filtered into trusts for your children, and they are irrevocable trusts, which means they are an entity unto themselves. The trust has its own tax ID, and the assets that you leave for your children go into that trust. And so what does that mean as a practical matter for your kids? It means that in addition to filing their own personal tax returns pertaining to their own assets, there will be a separate tax return that they'll be responsible for filing, or perhaps the trustee of the trust will be responsible for filing that tax return. And the idea here is that all of the assets that you're leaving for your children go into this asset protection trust. If you have really young kids, a trustee that you would choose would manage those assets on behalf of your children, maybe for their whole life. But many parents whom I work with decide that at a certain age, it would be a good idea for their child or children to start working in tandem with the primary trustee to decision make regarding the assets in that dynasty trust set up for the child. So you can actually choose what age would feel right to you to allow your child to then step in and partner with the primary trustee. So they'd work together as co-trustees. But rest assured that the primary trustee would always be able to call the shots if they could not agree. If your child was talking about making imprudent investments, the primary trustee always has the ability to pull rank, essentially, and make the decisions, not have to have agreement, but wrest control from your child temporarily until they start making better decisions. And then eventually, you can choose an age at which you think, well, my child by 30 or 32 or 28 or whatever seems right to you and your family, by then they've probably gotten an education. By then they're acquiring assets of their own, and they probably have some solid money sense. And so I would feel okay with them stepping into that primary trustee role, which means that they themselves would be managing those assets for the rest of their lives. There's also a really cool thing that you can do, which is to build in language into your trust that creates these dynasty trusts for your kids. That if your child had a gambling problem, an alcohol problem, a drug addiction problem, were in the middle of a contentious and nasty divorce of their own, that they could be removed as trustee of their own individual Dynasty Trust share during that time when they probably are not going to make the best decisions. The primary trustee would step back in during that time frame. And isn't that a relief, or do you think that's a relief, to know that if your child had an addiction problem, that there's a mechanism within your plan to remove them so that they don't siphon money off at a record pace, spending it on, basically feeding their addiction and using that money in an irresponsible fashion. There is a mechanism that could prevent that from happening. So that is something that we talk to all of our clients about who are interested in this Dynasty Trust planning. And a lot of times if you have young kids or even youngish kids like I do, kids in their 20s who have not quite, they're just in the beginning part of acquiring assets. They haven't purchased a lot. They don't have that experience acquiring their own home, having a considerable stream of income and making investments yet. It's really important to understand that in the future, there's a high likelihood that they will do those things. They will own their own home. They will start making more money. Maybe they'll get married. Maybe they'll have children of their own. And the thing about living here in California, you may or may not know this in your own life or maybe watched other people that go through this, but because we are a community property state, your spouse can potentially be a creditor during divorce. So what that means for your children is if your children get married and then later divorced, the assets that they have could be lost in a divorce, or could be lost to creditors, could be lost in a bankruptcy. And so here's what that looks like. Imagine you leave your assets to your children outright. They take, the $500,000 that you leave to them or the $1 million that you leave to them, and they put it in their own bank account. Now they have to file bankruptcy because, something's happened in their business, and they need to make a strategic bankruptcy filing, or they're in the middle of a nasty lawsuit because somebody was injured very badly and they're not going to have enough insurance to cover the award, and so they have to file bankruptcy. Or they're just open to this creditor issue in litigation. Or this is something that many people don't know. Maybe their spouse is actually acquiring a bunch of student debt that your child may or may not know about. Or maybe their spouse is actually acquiring debt that your son or daughter doesn't know anything about. Well, as a married couple in California, they are responsible for their spouse's debt, whether they know about it or not. They are responsible for their spouse's student loans. That's a little bit more of a complicated analysis, but certainly if the student loans were acquired during the marriage, then the spouse is responsible for it. And so if they can't pay, or if there's a really nasty accident or something unforeseen happens, like COVID has this last year, where many businesses will file bankruptcy because of what happened, their personal assets will have to be declared as part of that proceeding and could be used to pay creditors. If there's a large lawsuit, personal injury lawyers are able to do an asset search to find out what assets people own so that they can be attached if there is a judgment against them. The nice thing about the asset protection planning, the Dynasty Trust planning, is the money or the assets that you've left behind for your children, they won't come up in an asset search because they're actually owned by the trust, not your child. And so the cool thing about all of that is that in the end, you have this vehicle through which the money you have left behind can be filtered into an irrevocable asset protection trust that will be there for your kids as a nest egg if they need it, even if their personal assets have been taken by creditors or in a bankruptcy. The money you've worked so hard for will be tied up in this asset protection trust and will be available to your child. That asset should never be commingled with a spouse. It should always be kept in a separate account. And that way your child always has the ability to control it and use it for themselves, for their family, but as they see fit, not in a joint account with their spouse. So how would that feel to you if you knew that you had a way that you could make sure that everything you've worked so hard for could be placed in a dynasty trust for your child to make sure that they would always have that money protected, couldn't be taken from creditors, and available exclusively for your child without risking it being taken in a divorce or any kind of other unforeseen creditor situation. So many of my clients really think this is a cool option to be able to protect those assets far, far down the road, long after their own passing. And I wanted to just talk about it a little bit because it is a nifty little tool that we have in our tool belt as planners to offer up to our clients if they are interested. So, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of The Daily with Christine. Let us know if we can help you. Give us a call. Let us know how we can help you. That is what we're here to do. If you want to receive more information, we have lots of different ways to do that with you. And so grateful for the fact that you're watching this video and tuning into our channel. Subscribe if you like our content, like our videos, and let us know what else you'd like to hear about, and I'll be happy to create content around that. Have a great day. Take care.